A lot has happened in the Canadian political system this year, from the COVID-19 pandemic, a recession, the prorogation of Parliament, and a throne speech. We've seen a lot of promises for change. Change in the way we conduct business, in the way we support Canadians, and overall in the way we conduct Parliament. But what if a so-called progressive agenda is far from being progressive at all? A new book by the Managing Director of the Macdonald-Laurier Institute claims that there needs to be a shift in perspective when it comes to how we view Canadian society. Lee Crowley's new book, Gardeners versus Designers, has been noted by leaders in the political and justice fields as a timely and important piece of work that could reframe the way Canadians view public policy and politics. So let's dig deeper into this theory. Joining me now is Mr. Lee Crowley, Managing Director at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute. Sir, thank you for your time today.
Thanks for having me on the show.
So let's start off by defining this progressive zeitgeist that you are referring to in your book when you talk about our current political climate.
Sure. Well, I think there's two pieces to it. On the one hand, there's a campaign of vilification against Canadian society. You know, somehow Canada has become racist, sexist, homophobic. We're genocidal. We're kind of crazed, evil people in Canada, according to the progressive mindset. And of course, the other side of it is that the progressives know how to fix this. They see Canada as a problem that needs to be fixed. And the way that they're going to fix it is they're going to sweep aside many of the old traditional ways we do things. The way that we buy drugs, the way that we look after our kids, the way that we pay ourselves, universal income as opposed to, say, working in the marketplace. All of these things are part of a progressive agenda, which says the people in Ottawa, advised by experts, know better than Canadians how their lives should be run.
And you claim that this way of handling politics will ultimately be a great fault line that will actually separate Canadians. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, well, I think Canadians are already separated over this. You know, I think the thing is that while our political leaders these days engage in much of this vilification, as I've said, of Canada in our past, you know, the attacks on Sir John A. Macdonald and many others that I'm sure your viewers are familiar with, they are keen to just undermine our view of Canada. Now, my experience is that Canadians actually don't feel that way. Canadians are actually quite proud of Canada. They feel that Canada has achieved many great things. We are a society that the rest of the world looks on in envy, and indeed, there are more people in Canada born in another country who chose to come here than almost any other country in the world. So clearly, I think the average Canadian is not on board with this idea that Canada is a nasty place that needs to be fixed. On the contrary, most Canadians are quite proud of Canada. I certainly am. And so I think there's going to be great battles ahead over, what is the right way to think about Canada? Are we a bad place that needs fixing? Or are we fundamentally a good place that needs incremental improvement? And I think that's going to be the great battle line.
Now, I really want to get into the title of your book. You used an analogy here, gardeners versus designers. Can you tell us what you mean by gardeners and designers?
Of course. Well, go back to this idea that for many Canadians, the society we have created here is actually quite an attractive one. It's brought people from all over the world to live here in Canada. And the thing to remember is that nobody designed the society that we think of as Canada. There isn't some designing genius who said, this is the way Canada is going to be. These are the kind of institutions we're going to have. Canada as we know it has been created by Canadians, by their behaviors, by their choices, by the things they want to do with their lives, by the kind of jobs they want to have, by the kind of businesses they create, by how they educate their children. And so I think of that as not being a design society, but on the contrary, something that has grown up out of the individual efforts of Canadians. And I think of that as gardening. Gardeners aren't in charge. Gardeners are participants in the creation of something, a garden that is beautiful to look at, but has many different pieces, all of which unfold under their own energy. Designers, on the other hand, they're the people who say, no. We can't trust the efforts of Canadians to create their own lives, to live, to know how they want to live. We're going to fix things for Canadians because we know better than they do how Canadians ought to be living.
Some really interesting points there, Mr. Crowley. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you're interested in buying Mr. Crowley's book, be sure to search it online, Gardeners versus Designers. Thank you so much, sir. After the break, Ontario is limiting access to long-term care homes, and TC Energy signs a deal with Canadian Indigenous communities. That and more news from around the world. Stay tuned.